Welcome to Freedom. This is today's edition of the Youth Roundtable on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today, we are going straight to the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda, and we are discussing, recently we had what was dubbed the Uganda Parliament exhibition, and very many things came out from the exhibition, but also some other venues that could have information about the Parliament of Uganda. But we want to question, what is coming out? Is it a question of accountability, or is it a power struggle at the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda now? Joining me in that conversation is a panel of two distinguished gentlemen whom I will ask to introduce themselves in a minute, starting with you, gentlemen.
My name is Lawel Muhwezi. I am just a concerned citizen in this discussion. I am glad to be back to the Youth Roundtable. It's been a while.
Thank you, concerned citizen. I don't know why he refuses to put out, is it because of time? He has a very long CV, but he chooses to. Anyway, you most welcome. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much. My name is Aijuka Allan. I'm a student of law at Makerere University, and it's a pleasure to be back. Hopefully, we will share more about our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you're most welcome. Now, gentlemen, before even going into, is it a power struggle, is it accountability, what is your general feel of the very many revelations that came out of Parliament of Uganda, courtesy of the Uganda Parliament exhibition? I'll start with you.
I think, first of all, the spark of the exhibition was the saga that brought Honorable Mpuga in the light of people's evaluation, especially on social media, when people are talking about the 500 million. And of course, they related it to being dirty money, corruption. The party itself dubbed it corruption and corrupt money, and so on. So the first impression that we got over the days as things unfolded, a number of politicians were brought out how much they had spent on travels and so on. I remember an incident when some document leaked and millions spent by Honorable Semujunganda, one of the people that we admire as citizens and as intellectuals in that field, as someone we see who is critical, but critical with reason. Figures were showing that he was overspending. His defense, to some extent, he was just, showing that social media is the worst judge, to the extent that the discussions on social media do not end as a matter of reason, but as a matter of the majority. And the impression that we all got was desperation as a state, as citizens of this country, and especially as youth. We are here as youth. And that level of desperation, amidst all the challenges that we are facing, the government is complaining there's no money. When people cry for services, they try to show that there isn't sufficient to provide for all the services. But when you try to weigh the budgetary expenses by Parliament, so far what we have seen, because majority of these things are rumors, earlier on the issues relating to how much MPs receive money or gratuities or allowances were just, it was a secret. Until around 2019, when I think there's some publication that talked about what had been discussed in a committee, and the disclosure related it to over 35-something million that MPs receive. But these guys have always told us that they receive 6 million as net payment. And with the exclusion of all the other, other additional payments, allowances and so on, then in addition to the cars that they receive at the beginning of their tenure, those who have been there for a number of terms, they still receive more cars and so on. I remember the time when they were giving out cars, there was a lot of complaints and so on. But the impression that we got as citizens and as youth was that kind of desperation. Like, where are we going? Is there any hope? We've been seeing members of opposition as people come to positively criticize the government in matters of spending, but when things have unfolded, they are part of the dirty waters. I remember the time when the NUP MPs were in the limelight for the same issues of the 40 million that the NUP termed as dirty money. And some of the MPs made an attempt to return the money. I remember the time Twaha Kagabo returned the money, and he was almost becoming a victim of the circumstances. And all those things, at the end of the day, they disappear after a number of months. But I can tell you that this one exposed a lot of things, whereas the truth of these and all those facts that were disclosed on social media cannot be, verified. I remember what Semuju was writing in his response, that the information that is being published is not verified. And as a matter of rules that journalists follow, should have verified information. These guys just publish documents, but there is no smoke without fire. So in my opinion, that what we are into as citizens is some kind of desperation, wondering, shall we continue moving forward with this big parliament, spending this way? What is the future of our government? What is the future of our nation? What is the future of our GDP? So we are just in a situation of desperation.
Thank you so much. In a situation of desperation, Mr. Muhwezi, what is your general feel of the entire exhibition and the things that came out?
What's my... I don't know. I think for like an average and normal citizen that does not often pay attention to parliament or to public affairs, perhaps they are shocked or desperate. But me as Muhwezi or Lawel, it's business as usual. All you have is just a more shameless person at the helm of parliament. That, because corruption has really become part of our government infrastructure. So the fact that, people are eating money, for me, is not really shocking. The only thing that is quite surprising is that people who are not paying attention now have been forced to pay attention, especially to the people at the helm of parliament, to see them for what they really are. But all that is being revealed is what has been happening, is what some of us, for example, I know about. So I don't really think that, for me, at individual level, there's nothing except that, you have a shameless person and the cohort being seen for what they are. But otherwise, this is the looting that happens every day, especially in almost all government institutions.
Thank you so much. Muhwezi there is not surprised at what came out of parliament, and certainly that's more shocking than even the revelation, because then if you do have such information and Ugandans are not aware, certainly you have a duty to make some of these Ugandans aware of this information. But we discuss that a little later. I come back to you, Mr. Aijuka. The speaker came out to make, and I will quote, two statements.
Yes.
One statement, she says, I do not respond to rumors. And in another statement, she says, the people that are bringing out this information are simply people that are interested in taking up my position. What do you make of such a response from the speaker? When you have such a multitude of revelations, a lot of money, there was an allegation that she spends roughly 400 million a week, talk about the money she gets for vacations, talk about her own salary, the budget at her office, when she says, I don't respond to rumors.
Political statements are always clear. When someone makes a political statement to redeem themselves, you don't have to ask. This was a question of accountability, especially to the general populace, not to individuals, not to a particular organ of the government, not that the executive was asking how much are you spending, not that the IGG was asking how much are you earning, have you reported how much you earn from this and that. It was a political statement, because everything now comes back to her office. She wants to show, because the video I watched, if it wasn't yesterday, it must be a few days ago, when she was in her home area, and when she went to register as an interim member, and she made a speech, quite a speech I can say, and that's when majority of those statements came out, and the videos you're watching are just quotations of that, and people are wondering who wants to take over the seat, because when they turn those things political, because it was a matter of raising sentiments amongst her people, to show that our position as the region or as a constituency of speakership is being tested. Someone wants to take it away. So why does she make such a statement? It's one, political, to win support. And on the other hand, calling them rumors, of course, in the perspective of the evidential requirements of what is required to satisfy that this that has been put to the public is true and right, I don't think the standards were met on social media. On the other hand, Ugandans make a presumption that the number of people on Twitter now X are all the citizens of this country.
What are the standards, though?
In the standards of the kind of evidence that would require to see that this is the true and the reality. Because what the documents, who publishes the documents that we are seeing? Are the documents
but you see, Aijuka, if I come in on that one, first, information came out.
Yes.
In the later days, it goes on to be published in some of the newspapers in the country.
Yes.
When I read a story in the newspaper, say the Daily Monitor, I suspect that is confirmed or is... Number two, you have documents that are stamped and signed from Parliament of Uganda, and Parliament of Uganda is not disowning these documents. That would be proof enough to me, an ordinary Ugandan, to say it is actually factual.
Man, I said earlier that where there is smoke, there is some fire. That should be the basis of weighing these documents. I would be compelled to believe, of course, from the public opinion, to say that how come when documents, or when money was talked about on Mpuga's saga, he came to admit, when the document that came out about Honorable Semuju Nganda, about the millions that were spent on the trips to Kenya, the trips to the West and so on, when the documents came out, he did not dispute them. He agreed, but then he was showing that this was money that accumulated over time. The kind of information that we have, whereas it might be true, the presentation of the information to the population is causing the disparity I'm talking about. Yes, we are receiving the information, but in a raw format. I can tell you that true, these guys are spending. And I should be understood in this perspective that I'm not coming to defend parliamentarians on what they spend, but I'm coming to stand as a Ugandan who knows that, one, we come back to these politicians when they come to our constituencies. We want to ask them for money, for funerals, parties, and so on. These guys become desperate and want to get more money. So what they do is to bulge their budgets, to bulge their allowances, and so on, to get more money. On the other hand, what is the dollar equivalent of a Ugandan shilling? So in my opinion, the evidence that is required is over and above the tests we have on social media. You cannot just pick a document anywhere and you make the public to believe it. True. In matters of politics and accountability, it comes back to us as what kind of information are we receiving? If it is not disputed, does it now make a presumption that, okay, that is the money? We've seen documents on media, and at the end of the day, when they are verified, we realize that they are all lies. So I can tell you that, one, I'm trying to convince myself from this perspective that this information may not be true, but there is smoke that might be result in fire. At the end of the day, we've been waiting for a statement from Parliament itself, but what we've received, like you said, is a statement from the Speaker that these are rumors. What else do you want us to say?
You see, the source that brought information about the Honorable Matthias Mpuga is the same source that brought information about the Speaker
that hasn't been verified.
Can I just interject?
Please.
Just on the evidence. So I think it's quite unfair to say that the mode of how, or the medium on how information is presented means that if, for example, social media, that we cannot take it as evidence enough. I don't think it's true unless you want to argue the law on where the law wants to look at the source.
Yeah, but because I want to ask.
Let me just complete this. Because the question first is, where do journalists get information from? Right? I think they always get maybe you have a source within Parliament, or you have a source within State House, or ISO, who always leak this information to you, and the next thing you're publishing it in a newspaper. Of course, you have an editor who sometimes has to verify those facts, but I don't think that the source that the source is so watertight that it can't be doubted. It's just that you require, if it's a media house, to have standards, right? And I think that we also need to be alive to circumstances. We have a media that is largely not doing its job. Quite honestly, money has been embezzled for quite some time at Parliament. Not any of the big media houses ever came out to break these stories, right? not even the press broke these stories. It is after the exhibition that they have taken up, but also they also take up the sensational part. So what the truth is that the fourth estate, which is the media, is not doing its job. Parliament, which is supposed to be one that holds the executive's account, is the one stealing. Government is also stealing. It has no incentive to hold Parliament to account. So citizens find themselves in a situation where they can only, speak out for themselves. And social media has presented that chance, that platform for them to be vigilant and say, look, our money is being taken. But I also know the person, for example, Agatha, who leaked that information, is a journalist, a credible, celebrated journalist. I don't think that because she's a journalist, then that information is verified. So let us then be specific to what was shared, right? The first, I think the document he talked about, Mpuga, was a document that showed the minutes of the commission, which had NRM commissioners, Mpuga, and the speaker. In that document, and the Minister of Finance, who sits on the commission, was not present. The Prime Minister was not present. Zake was suspended. So it is people who were beneficiaries of the said money, it's called service award, who were only the beneficiaries were part of a meeting in which they gave themselves an award. An award which was, when you look at the timeline, it was in the middle of their tenure. And so it becomes also difficult for people who are arguing that it's gratuity or it's a service award, because those are given at the end of your term. But also we can discuss whether an MP doing their job needs to be given a service award in terms of money. But what I want to drive at in terms of authenticity is that when Mpuga comes out, he does not dispute the fact that the commission sat. Chris Obore, the spokesperson of Parliament, does not dispute that the commission sat and gave themselves money. What they are doing is try to defend that it is okay to have a service award. So like the document itself is not in dispute, which means the source is credible, right? The other thing we want to talk about, when you look at the money spent, when you look at those documents, they are gotten from IFRIS, which is like the government system where they keep all these things. So what you have is indeed someone who perhaps has a source within the system that is giving them this information, right? And again, like he says, the people who are not disputing the fact that indeed they took that money. So for me, I think the contest is not on the credibility of the information. It is credible. But if you are a speaker, you are a monk, you're chairing a house, and you are the victim, you are the alleged thief, the only tool you have when you dispose is say, let's not pay attention to that, it's rumor. You become dismissive. But I think no citizen ought to be persuaded by what someone who is indeed the victim is saying as a political statement. Because, like again, as I said, the spokesperson of Parliament, Chris Obore, is not disputing those figures, right? Okay, he's not disputing the authenticity of those figures. So
thank you so much.
I think we do a disservice when we say it's not authentic, and therefore we can't discuss it for what it is.
Thank you, and I think the both of you will engage on this one. What is the actual position of social media platforms in the running of, the country and social spaces? For example, we've seen government put out key national information through social media, and it's considered authentic and official and recognized. We've seen organizations put out, for example, job adverts on social media, on X, on Facebook. We've seen organizations transacting business on social media. There it is okay. When information comes out and it's supposed to pin someone, then social media is called a rumor. What is the true position of social media in our society?
Social media opens the world. That is the first thing. Right from the time of print media to digitization, now to the actual social media through mobile apps and so on, it opens the world that even if I'm in my village back in Western Uganda, in Bushenyi, whatever happens in a matter of seconds, I'm aware that side. And also, on the other hand, it's a means of communication that anyone can publish whatever they want. That is something we need to understand from the onset, that anyone has a right to publish all they want. And what can be pulled down will be pulled down after a matter of time and further verification and so on. So I can say that social media, whereas the government considers it in its publications, but you will not hear where the law requires gazetting of a particular document or gazetting of particular information, that the government has opted that social media is the best option. Because how many people are reached by social media, like I said earlier, I cannot say that all the information shared or majority of the information shared on social media is wrong or is not verified. No. People, by the time someone sits, thinks of something, or gets a picture, and knows that it's going to reach these kinds of people, and they have a credible, reputation about, giving out people information, by the time they send such a document, they have reasons to believe that that is true. But the coming to the conclusion of its truth is now another question. But I can say that social media is a medium that opens the world, that people can share information that others need to hear. And on the other hand, in matters of governance and politics, it is a tool for accountability in our generation. We've had a number of exhibitions right from the beginning. We've gone through so many sectors, and it has opened the eyes of many on what is happening. And what we thought as mere comments at the end of the day, we realize that it's the reality that is on ground. And the only thing that I can say is that we cannot always hold ourselves bound to the information on social media. Even the information that is published in newspapers, sometimes you'll see publishers of different information coming out to correct the information. What I can only say is that, yes, social media opens us to an opportunity to know different things, but at the end of the day, the information that we receive right there without verification and so on, if you outrightly believe it, then you are bound to be, a victim of those very circumstances that you believe in.
Thank you so much. Lawel, you see, when he says what he says, then you come to look at such a scenario, the age of online activism. In this country, you and I know it is not very easy for one to go to the streets down there to undertake a demonstration or a protest. When people head to social media, but you also have a risk of misinformation and disinformation. How should these activists then balance the two, giving out information credibly, avoiding the disinformation and misinformation?
I think he's right. Social media is like a marketplace where everyone is giving their opinion, but I think it's also it platforms different voices and gives chance for citizens to be heard or to participate in ways that otherwise they wouldn't, right? So I think what you pray for is, especially when it comes to sensitive information, can we always do some level of fact-checking? Can we have more like sensitization on people on how to use social media? It's social media, but I think that when it comes to holding people in leadership accountable, I think that as a country, at least Uganda social media, they are doing quite well. And the thing with social media is that it gives equal platform for everyone to debunk what they think is not true. And you realize that often people who don't have credible information, oftentimes they are dismissed or they are not taken seriously on social media. And that is why some people will say some things like, a lot of people, like there's one guy called Hudu saying, even Kakwenza himself, he's an activist, but because of his way of operation, sometimes when he tweets something, people want to take it with a pinch of salt. So I think that the thing with social media is that people can know who to trust and who not to. And so if you want trust, you have got to increasingly give people credible information. But also like media houses or the people who are called out always provide clarity. Because I think I have seen there was a false tweet against the Minister of Health. What's her name?
Jane Ruth Cheng.
Yeah, Jane Ruth Cheng, which she said was fake, and no one is following it up. So I think it also has checks and mechanisms to protect people against fake information. But I think for me, the takeaway from here is how it platforms people whose voice have always been curtailed to speak up. Because like no one is really speaking for us.
Thank you so much. No one is really speaking for us. I want to come back to you, ndugu Aijuka. When you look at still the information, MPs share money. These people sit at the commission and decide which salary they should get. But what intrigues more is the fact that both the government side, the NRM side, and the opposition side,
They're eating.
it's, I don't know, what kind of leadership do we have as a country?
You see, most of the times when people are hungry,
Yes.
even in a society when they have conflicts, at the end of the day, what brings them together is if one gets the food and agrees to share it, they'll first eat the food, then fight afterwards.
For sure.
So, like I said from the beginning, we've always respected a number of opposition leaders and so on. And what is happening on social media, I talked about desperation, and I wish it is contextualized. Desperation in what have I been believing, for instance, in Mpuga, someone whom I was seeing as an intellectual, someone who thinks far ahead of even the kinds of arguments that are raised by the very opposition. I've seen Honorable Semujunganda, the saga they had in FDC. Now, issues of money are coming against him in parliament. When people come to it, sometimes they first avoid the challenges. So the reality of the matter is that all the MPs that we have in parliament, by the time the first stage for them to come to parliament is that they first spend with an expectation that they will recover their money at whatever level they go. And when they even get more opportunities, for instance, to be commissioners, to be a leader of opposition, to be chief whip, and so on, those are added privileges for those guys to recover. On the other hand, when they reach there, their strategy is, in the last 2 years, that I must prepare for the next election so that I am ready to recover my money. So whether opposition, whether the government side, these guys receive money. Sometimes even illegal money. The 40 million that came to social media, and some came to admit and return it, and then they almost arrested because they were accusing the speaker of corruption. They were, you know, when someone brings back the money and say, you gave me this money, but then you say, I didn't, but that is money, something valuable. How do you say that you didn't give out that money when someone has been, you know, pinned and shown that you've received wrong money that you're not supposed to take, and then they agree to take it back, then you reject it because you don't want to receive it in cameras. So I think both the opposition, when it comes to money, I know there are the people who come out to tell us, Honorable Semuji will always tell you that Mr. Museveni dresses up this amount of money. On every journey he goes with this number of cars. Each of them takes fuel. Each of them has someone who is paid. Each of them has X, Y, and Z. We look at all those things and feel like the evil is on one side. I can only tell you, I had a lot of belief some time back in the opposition of Uganda. But as the events unfold, especially in respect to money, starting with the saga of the 40 million of NUP, now to what separated the FDC, the accusations against Norbert Mao in the DP, what is happening now at Parliament, I just feel like what is at Parliament right there is a matter of people discussing what can we eat from this. Yes, there are moments when they are like discussing what affects the nation, but at the end of the day, whether opposition or the ruling government, when it comes to the table that they are all hungry, they reach a compromise position, they first eat, and then they come back to the cameras and abuse each other.
Thank you so much. Muhwezi, you see, let's talk sustainability. A member of parliament at the start of the term is given 210 million shillings
For a vehicle.
for a vehicle. He earns anything between 20 to 35 million shillings as a salary. He earns an extra allowance per sitting. He or she earns an extra allowance for visiting his or her constituency. He or she earns an extra money for a tablet, for fuel, for office space, some of them for accommodation. We have parliamentary commissioners. When you become a commissioner, Parliament gives you another vehicle, another salary of about, I think about 10 million shillings or thereabout, aids and so on. do we have this kind of money? How sustainable is the spending of Parliament and broadly the government of the Republic of Uganda?
I don't know. That situation, especially for me, sometimes is that you just get to understand that your agenda, your interest as a citizen are not the interest of the government in power. So once you constantly hold the government to the standard of your expectation, all you can be is miserable. Because we all know that there is no money. The medical interns spent almost a year without being allocated and starting their internship because government said they don't have money. We have even public servants at district level whose salary is delayed because there's no money. When you look at our budget framework, the percentage of the money that goes into debt servicing is so high. We even have had challenges sourcing for equity and even money to invest in the oil sector to jumpstart it. By all metrics, we do not have money. When you look away from these statistics and you look at the conditions of the people, in whatever district you come from, when you move out of the municipality and just take 15 kilometers inside any district, there is poverty. If you look at these NRM national leaders have been going to their villages to register. You look at the buildings where the registration is taking place. It's bad. So it is there's no money genuinely, but you
are they even bothered? When they drive on those roads, when they go to those ramshackle buildings, when they look at the schools in the villages.
When you listen to the Minister of Finance, Matia Kasaija, he is perhaps part of the loot. But when he's talking, he looks helpless because the PS sit and they say this is what the economy needs, but the money is being taken. So they don't know what to do. So what you have is that the interest of the citizens or what the country needs is not priority to what the people who are running the government have. I think their interest is to maintain power through patronage and use of money. And that's why, for me, it's good for citizens to have this agency, to be desperate, to realize what's going on. But it's highly unlikely that the president, for example, will hold the speaker to account. Because that very money that is stolen is what is used to patronize MPs on both sides of the aisle, whether it's government or opposition. And for quite some time, people have been wondering why the speaker, despite not being the most intelligent or organized person, has every opposition person quiet. They can't speak. Because he has gathered all this money around her, which she uses to buy them or for carrot and stick or threaten them. So the money that is being stolen, it's hard to separate that which she spends on her luxurious lifestyle and what she used to sustain the regime, because that's the money that the regime spends on bribing MPs, on throwing at people on concerts, on the First Sons events. That's the money. Where do you think it comes from? So what you have really, just to answer your question direct, is a situation where citizens have serious necessities and interests, but the government in power does not have similar interests. It has its own interest of self-sustaining.
I wanted to comment on sustainability.
Please.
Around 2019, there was a Mzungu, I think he was the division leader of Makerere, Clark. He made a comparison between that time, not today, because if you do the comparison now, it will be more embarrassing. Compared the Ugandan parliament and the salaries that the parliamentarians were receiving, plus their allowances and so on, to a number of European countries that have bigger economies, are better developed and so on, and only came to a conclusion that in East Africa, the only country that spends more than Uganda on their MPs is Kenya. Tanzania is a bigger economy. Other countries are doing their best to utilize the little they have. But what we are doing is to expand the parliament, spend more money, and at the end of the day, majority of the monies we use in this kind of expenditure, it is donor money. These are loans that we are getting from outside. So when you ask about the question of sustainability, I wonder whether there will be a day. Of course, there is no country that doesn't have debts, but where there will be a day that will feel that indeed Uganda, we are coming to a middle-income economy, as our president usually alleges. In my opinion, sustainability in the face of all this kind of looting that we see, all the alleged looting and the real looting that we see through the luxurious expenditure on parliament, vehicles are being paraded for even those who had retired. They had received their benefits, but then they are adding them more benefits. At the end of the day, I wonder if someone retires, don't they go back and work? Or are they preparing for retirement? You're giving them more benefits and so on. So I think the sustainability of us, that, and Ofono Pondo of recent, who also spoke like a desperate Ugandan and said that there is now a need for a revolution. And he added that there might even be a need for a violent revolution. So I can only comment to say that it is no longer sustainable to spend what we do not have. It is a time for the legislative arm of government, the executive, to sit and weigh what is necessary to spend on, especially on payments of to people who try to show that they are solving people's problems, yet they are immense in wealth. I've been to a number of places where I've visited homes of members of parliament. Of course, to some, they still live a normal lifestyle, but then there are those who you see that in a matter of 3 years after becoming a member of parliament, he will put up a mansion, buy all the neighbors, and enclose the whole place with a wall place or whatever, a fence, and he becomes a king. Now, the kingly mentality of Africans has never left African leaders, that when you take up a position of leadership, you must immense as much wealth as possible, because the mentality of our African kings was that you must immense wealth from your subjects and even the neighbors. You even need to go and loot from neighbors, even annex them, but for the purpose of looting. Even when you go to the different palaces that we have of kings, and they tell you this kind of building was put up these many years ago, and you weigh and see how the subjects were living at that time, desperately in poverty. Like he said, if you look at the photos that they are posting, the places where they're registering from as the members of parliament, you really wonder, if you compare the pictures that they have been posting from before, and now the ones they have posted when they have gone back home, the kinds of places they are passing through. I don't know if whether they look at those places and desire that they should be changed. So the kind of expenditure is no longer sustainable. There is need for the government to see to it and realize that we are losing to a few Ugandans. Of course, there was an allegation of recent that only about 1,000 persons, of course, physical, natural persons and artificial persons, contribute 75% of the Ugandan revenue, which means that there are certain companies and certain individuals who own majority shares in the Ugandan economy. So which shows that at the end of the day, we are trying to create a society where there will be the rich will be richer, and the poor are going to be desperately poor. They will never go to school. We'll have more uneducated people. When they even get educated, they can't get jobs because the government has not planned to set up institutions where they can, access more skills and create their jobs, or where they can go and work. Even when it comes to work, those issues will arise even there in parliament. So I can say it's no longer sustainable.
Thank you so much. And gentlemen, thank you for those amazing views. The Youth Roundtable takes a very short break, and we shall be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
You are still on Uganda's leading freedom platform, the Civic Space TV, and this is the Youth Roundtable. Today I am Phillip Muliisa. In the studios, I have two gentlemen, Mr. Muhwezi Lawel and Aijuka here. They're discussing the extravagance, the misconduct at the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. Lots of unhealthy information came out courtesy of the Uganda Parliament exhibition on X, but also other various sources that came in after that hint. Now, gentlemen, where we left off, we talked sustainability. Where do I want us to go? Parliament of the Republic of Uganda is an institution mandated to do oversight work. Is an institution that should oversee the resources of Ugandan citizens. How are they utilized? How is government managing these resources? Call them to order where they are not managing them well, and so on. Unfortunately today, the same parliament is mismanaging the resources. Do they have the moral authority now to talk to judiciary, to talk to the executive on how they spend? How do we balance it then as a country?
When you go to parliament as a visitor, they will give you manuals, like procures, and one of them, we were there recent as students, were doing some research. One of them will tell you what are the roles of a parliamentarian and what MPs do not do. They will tell you MPs, the mandate of the MP is not to attend burials and weddings to give out money. Their role is not to construct roads. Their role is not to construct schools. Their role is not to do X, Y, and Z. And they just break down the role of a member of parliament. And you realize that over time, in as much as they make the claim that we do oversight role in the committees, when we are in recess, we go back to our areas and we do oversight role and so on. You just realize that it's just a dynamic, a political dynamic that they have failed to realize their actual responsibility. Even when it comes to the primary role, which is legislation, it is really, sometimes you look at the laws that are being drafted and put out by parliament and then later on challenged by the judiciary, challenged in the judiciary, not by the judiciary. You look at, for instance, there is a law that is in the pipeline, the Alcoholic Drinks Control Bill. When you read it and you see the kinds of duplications from the existing law that is there, you just wonder, why do people legislate out of emotions? By reading that, you just notice that they are just legislating out of politics. At the end of the day, when they bring such legislations, they are struck out. Provision after provision, we remember Public Order Management Act and so on, provision after provision, all the money spent in creating such a law goes to waste. Now, at the end of the day, they have an oversight role. We have separate arms of government, but there is that underhand of, checks and balances. When the parliament is doing wrong, you can go to the judiciary and challenge. When the executive, of course, with some immunity, there's a room for challenging each other. When they have an oversight role, checking what is being done here and there, and the major oversight role is done through the budgeting process. That's where they do their best to allocate the finances. But I wonder, when they are allocating themselves such a share, can they say that now the executive cannot claim all this amount because for us we have taken less? Can they say the judiciary is taking too much, for us we are taking less? So I think they no longer have a moral ground to come and make certain claims against the executive, against the judiciary, especially the opposition members of parliament. In my opinion, after this exhibition, whereas in my opinion, I still hold all that information as raw information and look at it, but it brings, like I said earlier, it brings to me a certain perception when I look at the information. There's a feeling that it brings in me, what is the future of my country? Are we going to have a country that is going to be sustained economically with these kinds of spending and so on? So the parliament itself, in its oversight, right? I know at some point when you have over-compromise, for instance, if you are a parent and you are, a perennial drunkard, or you over-abuse and insult people, you have no moral ground to come and, chastise your child that you are doing this wrong, you're doing this. No. So in my opinion, the parliament is crippling itself in its own work by compromising in its role.
Parliament is a self-budgeting entity.
Yes.
Do you think it's about time we change that and create a body that should budget for this parliament?
There was a former Attorney General, his name usually skips, Deputy Attorney General, his name skips my mind, around 2019 there. He made a comment and he said that Parliament is vested with too much power when it comes to money, especially its own payments. And around the same time, the President was really complaining that every time parliamentarians are increasing their salaries. And you know, these things never come out. You will never know how much. And the truth is, very few people know how much a member of parliament receives as payment. So what remains is that since they are financing, self-accounting, they will do all the dirty things and cover up at the end of the day. Then what we'll hear as citizens is, we want a supplementary budget for this, this and that. So as a body that is, that cuts for itself from the cake, I think there is need for a change. When you look at the Parliament, I think Enumeration Act of around 2002, it's some kind of old law that considers around, I think the time I checked was the Prime Minister was getting around 153,000, around that amount as the payment. So when you look at the kind of laws that we have governing how Parliament receives money and how it is spent within Parliament, the committees that are constituted in matters of expenditure by Parliament, I think there is need to restructure and have a more open and easy to account kind of mechanism, an umbrella under Parliament. But of course, MPs will never agree to this. It will remain a proposal.
It's their duty to put it out.
Yeah.
Oh, gentlemen, the structure of Parliament, we have 557 of them today in a country of roughly 45 million people thereabout. Currently, they are constructing a new extension to the parliamentary building because they can no longer fit in the available space. In the same country where we are finding space for parliamentarians to sit and find office space, we have pupils who are getting their education under mango trees. We have hospitals that do not have medicine. We have health centers that even lack medical doctors. You have medical interns that were not deployed like you mentioned, and they have been deployed, but also there are reports that they are not being paid on time. You have roads, the potholes. There was an exhibition on that. Everywhere you go, there is a pothole. I'm sure when you're coming here, you went through one. When you look at this parliament, is the structure still relevant in the Uganda of 2024?
What structure?
The structure
Parliament or the one they're constructing? Anyway, I think it's one who was giving OO's recommendation of the need for a revolution.
Yeah, revolution.
Because when in a democratic setting or infrastructure, it's impossible to deal with Parliament. Also, Parliament is given that unlimited power because it needs that independence to be able to hold everyone accountable. So we are in a fix. Even if Parliament is doing whatever it's doing, you cannot give the IGG or any other person power, or even the Ministry of Finance, to determine what Parliament gets. The thinkers, the constructors of the system presuppose that you have different citizens in every part of the country represented, and that meant that they had different challenges, they had different opinions, so you wouldn't have, even if they are political parties, you wouldn't have that level of consensus. Let me come. So what you have currently is like a developing class system where those who access the envelope that he said conspire together to eat. They forget their duties. Even if you said, and who can determine the salaries of Parliament? No one, because Parliament is one which does oversight on other entities.
Muhwezi, what you say is these politicians are conspiring to eat money at the detriment of the citizen.
That's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is, even if you said the president or the Ministry of Finance to determine what Parliament gets, it means there's no one who is determining what State House gets or Ministry of Finance you get, because you can't check each other. even if you can, then you would conspire and give everyone what they want, and it's okay. You get. So what you have is some sort of a class system where those who can access the envelope conspire and eat together at the expense of the common citizen. All statistics show only 1%, I think, I don't know if it was Daily Monitor, only 1% of the population earns 1 million in this country. So you have a whole lot of people who are not earning. When you look at the statistics on employment, so for me, it is just you have a class system. And that's why you are saying that NRM, opposition are all eating. That's the thing. It is, I don't want to discuss Marx, but Marx discusses the bourgeoisie who exploit the other people. So the opposition politicians, especially those who have been in parliament for more than one term, have continuously become part of the same system. The speaker was in FDC, she's now the speaker, the deputy speaker was in FDC, he was with these guys. Mpuga says Anita Mongo was teaching at his school. These guys know each other. On the cameras, like you said, they will say these things, but when they reach in the wings of parliament, they are the same guys. They are determining how to loot. Before the exhibition, there was the 40 million. What did the leader of opposition do about it? Nothing. It was only Kagabo who returned money, and he was sacrificed. The leader of opposition didn't defend him. The speaker didn't defend him. He ends up crossing to NRM because he had no one to lean back to. During Christmas, there was the bonanza. They took this money. The LOP knows that this money is being taken. He is even among those who take the money. So they are all the same. What you had before in 2017 was some semblance of a revolution, because the SI unit of people power was to say, these people have so long eaten, let's push them out, the ghetto. The problem you had is because it metamorphosized into a political party, it had to recruit the opposition, the DP bloc, who were already part of the problem. And so it gets itself caught in the cobweb. Maybe what we really need is, like O said, is indeed an organic revolution. And the thing with social media is at least you have elite participation. Because now what the elite have realized is that whereas you have a factory or you have a company operating, all the taxes you pay are consumed by this one lady who spends it a week. So there's no value. Because you're importing machines from China, there's a lot of taxes. The taxes you pay don't get to help the country, they are eaten. So you have a growing conscientization of the elite and the ghetto. We hope, we can't know how long it will take, but somehow what we need is not to redesign the democratic system of checks and balances. What we need is an overhaul of the system, which is a revolution.
If I ask you, when you look at these members of parliament, and you did talk about the elite being participants in the exhibition, what you need to become a member of parliament in terms of academics is a minimum of senior 6. Does this have an effect on the conduct of MPs as we see today?
No. I think it's no. When you look at the statistics, I don't have the clear numbers, but more than 70% of those people are university graduates.
Yeah.
They are the graduates, they are the ones with money, so the problem is not a minimum requirement.
And again, someone, I'm trying to recall who said, they did say that the leadership of a country is a true reflection of the peoples of that particular country or society for that matter. Do these MPs actually represent what we are as Ugandans?
How do I discuss it? So there's some guy called Chairman Mao in China. He had coined a concept. It was called empty elitism. A lot of people who had been part of the, I don't know if it was a communist party, they had gotten berries, they were speaking a lot of English, but that was not translating into work for the people. What he did was what I think was called the cultural revolution.
Yes, the
or
great
culture, where
proletarian
he got young
revolution
people.
of China.
It was called the Red Army. Some of these guys were lynched. Others were told to go back to where they come from and teach people how to produce and those things. Of course, there's a lot of critique about China, how he did whatever he did. But what we need is to destroy this political class and reimagine a country.
Thank you. To destroy. I come to you, Bwana Aijuka here. What we need is to destroy this culture. How do we destroy this culture? Do we have a young people? Do we have a citizen that is willing to take that sacrifice for this country?
You see, the system has been designed currently, both for the opposition and the governing ruling party, that whoever gets a leeway to the government, they are absorbed into the tradition and the culture of the leaders that we have. So when you say, do we still have youth who are really passionate about change? They are there. We have colleagues, when you're in those discussions, you really see that someone is passionate about seeing change. They even get emotional. You realize someone would really wish to cause change. But give them 3 years and they're into the system. You realize the level of compromise. And what challenges me most is that people who come out to speak good English and present themselves as those who wish the best for this country, at the end of the day, are the ones who go behind and look at the young generation and intoxicate them with a kind of agenda that misleads the nation. That for youth to come for example, I think you've heard of the National Youth Parliament, that is organized by a certain organization, and then youth come to parliament, they spend, I think, hours there. Then they vote a speaker who never comes back to bring youth there to say anything. Like, it is some way of capturing youth. You know, the way...
That's it for what it is.
Yeah.
Please allow me engage. You see, back in the days, you did say that the youth that are willing to see change, they even get emotional about this particular topic. In the days, he mentioned Chairman Mao Zedong, when the Chinese emotions came out, they reacted. When you come to Uganda, Youth Museveni, when he was dissatisfied with what was happening, there is something he did. Youth Milton Obote is something he did. Youth Ignatius Musazi, Youth Abbe Kakacha Mama Yanja, pre-independence. The forming of the Bataka Party, the forming of Uganda National Congress, these were young people. Their emotions drove them into forming some movements to fight for a cause they believed was for the future of this country. When you look at us today, students, you did talk about the Youth Parliament, we have the National Youth Council, we have the Ghana National Students Association, a couple of arrangements for young people. What are these associations looking at?
When you're starting an association for the youth, the first weakness that you will face as an individual, I've been a student leader before, and I'm now a student leader at Makerere University. The first weakness you will find as a youth, one, you don't have the money to finance. The days of Musazi had well-wishers, not the government, who were ready to support the cause without attachments. Today, you will come up with an agenda of promoting patriotism, promoting values, of fighting corruption. At the end of the day, the money that you're receiving to finance the agenda is money that is earned out of corruption. So I can tell you that whereas the youth are there, so many youth are coming up with different foundations, organizations, and so on, based on specific values. And when these youth are starting, they are really intentional. When you read the objectives, these people are very, very intentional. But the problem comes, the way you see these parliamentarians in parliament, in opposition, when you look at their agenda, they are really, really objective, and they want to cause change. But at the end of the day, when it comes to how do we finance this cause, because days have changed. Like there's a lot of dynamics that now follow for you to have something that you start as a revolution, and then it catches up with the people. The moment the government will hear that you are rallying youth against corruption, they will say that you are doing something political. They will not look at it as something that you're trying, to shape a generation that will come and they'll be future leaders. At the end of the day, those who will come out, they will be spotted, they will be taken to a particular corridor. By the time they come back, those guys, they will be speaking a different language. Even when you look at, like you said, the National Youth Parliament, in my opinion, I've ever been a member of the National Youth Parliament, and I attended online that time. I think it was my year 1. I listened to what happened the entire day. Majority of the time, the entire day was elections, voting a leader. Voting a leader where you're just getting delegates randomly. And you get delegates on the basis of who do I know, who is close, and so on. Those are the people that constitute the youth parliament. People that are supposed to voice. And now you realize how the youth come together. It's a matter of, because our thought was that people who go to parliament, because there are excuses of us who are online, that guys were getting allowances for sitting in parliament. So the whole mind is no longer about what have I presented before parliament. And then there were also rumors that came out that, you know, the motions that were presented by the youth in that parliament were drafted earlier by some people in parliament and were given to the particular people that read them out. All those things came out. So I can tell you that the youth have been suffocated in a way that they are not allowed to think for themselves. They are also poisoned by money, by wrong agenda.
You know,
and
there is
also
a narrative currently that
Yes.
says young people, instead of struggling for a revolution, like he says, are struggling for recognition by the people that are already at the top. Is that true? And when you look at institutions like the ones you just talked about, you can also talk about the youth leagues of different political parties, to the NRM Youth League, Young Youth. We have something in the NRM recently, YYM. That one, you have the FDC, you have something in UPC, youth. They are struggling for recognition at the top. Do you agree with that?
when you go to Makerere right now, you see how youth desire to be politically active. You will ask them a question. Why are you taking up this position? They are not fronting any agenda, no. You see, when I'm on this position, I can be seen. I will be recognized. When I'm done with campus, I will have some resume that someone will see me and know I was a leader. They had seen me somewhere. I can easily get a job. That is out of desperation. We are in a situation where we feel like if I over-engage in this, I might be unemployed. You understand? If I over-engage in this, I will go to a certain place, they will pull out this video where I was putting on a green suit and they will say, that day you said this and that. And that is the fear that engulfs the youth. So even in an environment where it feels so open for youth to air their views, but there's an underhand that keeps holding us back. I can tell you that many people out there desire to see change, and positive change, not just change. But the challenge is the routes that we are supposed to change, to go through, have potholes. Not actual roads, but the kinds of potholes where you will go and feel you're supposed to go smoothly, go through fellow youth, share with them this and that. And then you share with someone an opinion on how you can cause change in a particular arena. They are the ones who go and sell it out to the already corrupted. Then you will see them somewhere in a particular space. They are trashing whatever agenda you are planning on bringing up and covering everything because they have gotten an opportunity. So I can tell you that whatever we are seeing at Parliament is a true reflection of the grooming we are having behind here. We are being poorly groomed. I can tell you we no longer have leaders who take time to groom leaders in all the political parties without segregation, whether FDC, NUP, DP, ANT, and so on. There is still a challenge of grooming leaders. What happens is that we are all opportunists. We are trying to be opportunists, and the moment we are brought closer to any cake, no matter the size, you will hear in guild governments, the speaker of the guild house wants to eat money, the guild president has eaten money, so on and so forth. In a small association, we were dealing with a case recently. I heard the tribunal at Makerere. A case recently of a certain association. These guys are into money issues and people want to eat cash. So when you realize that someone is ready to eat money for just 1,000 people, now what if they get a bigger cake? What do you expect? So the youth are not well groomed, and the environment is really grooming very terrible leaders.
Thank you so much. Muhwezi, and he talks about money. Recently, I think there is an allegation that there is some mismanagement at the National Youth Council, something like that, about money and the expenditures out there, which is subject for another debate. It is a wrong signal from young people, at least. If we cannot manage resources at this level, then what stands for the future might be terrible. I want to ask you, Muhwezi, you see, like he mentioned, we are groomed badly, and this takes me to role modeling. When you look at great people, Thomas Sankara, he drew inspiration, the things he did. He drew some inspiration from when you read his writings and so on, from Jerry John Rawlings, who was in Ghana at the time. And Rawlings drew inspiration from, I forget the name, the leader of Madagascar before. Who is role modeling the youth of this country to become the leaders they want to be?
Who is supposed to role model them? I think that primary duty to shape a young person lies with, I think, family. So family and I think schools, because I think someone's who they become goes through different formation stages. And quite often by the time you reach 20, which is when you get to participate, or 18, your mind has been shaped. So I think what we have constantly is that at the grassroots, one, I think parents are not doing their job, or the society in which people grow in has sort of decayed, and there's no longer this urgency, sense of community to whip and shape a child to become what they become. The other stakeholders, like the church, we need to ask ourselves, is the church doing its part in as far as preaching morality, being against corruption? Because what we are facing is that constantly the church only talks, okay, I don't want to sound, but there's messages, oh, hope, hope, you're going to make it, you can get money, you can become this.
But not the how.
Yeah, but there is less about preaching about morality. Yeah. And you can see how, with the churches I go to, the Anglican church, that largely you have the most corrupt people who have gathered a lot of money being given the seats in front, and they're the ones who speak when the service is done. So constantly the church does not get to condemn people who are corrupt. The things that really the stakeholder society are supposed to do are not doing them. So this uncultured person gets in office. Of course, they have had all the vibrant values. What do I stand for? But when push comes to shove, when money is presented, they choose that. And I can say this because Moses is not here. But you have seen how they have formed YYM, trying to catch the eye of the president, saying things are not being done. Yet they've had a platform as NYC to perform for the people. And there's no tangible thing that you can say that NYC, since its election, has done. And it's not. And of course, some of these are your friends, but you find yourself in a hard position where you have to tell them that, look, colleagues, there's nothing you're doing. They have also just joined and they just want to catch the eye of a president. I feel bad for him when he feels bad about the National Youth Parliament. To me, it's just a gig. It's just someone who has an organization called Faraja, calls a few people, they sit for a day, he gives them bonuses, he gets accounts for the funding. That's all. The Speaker of the National Parliament never gets to sit anywhere. The day they are voted is the last day of their tenure.
Even East African Youth Parliament.
Yeah, so...
Thank you so much. You didn't mention about the church and going to church. Recently, I had a conversation, I did say something to one religious leader at the risk of blasphemy. There was a church service going on, so I tried to listen to what people were praying for and what the leader was praying for. Oh, dear God, give these young people money so that they buy an iPhone, so that they buy a good shoe, so that they buy a car. And I did ask my pastor, oh, pastor.
You will also get a passport.
Yes, you get a passport. I did ask. So when are you going to pray for these people? Instead of getting money to buy an iPhone, you pray for knowledge, like Solomon did in the Bible, such that they get knowledge to make that iPhone here. And I don't want to tell you the response I got from this leader, but let's get back to Parliament. When you look at the way things are, we must agree, all of us, it looks messy. It's messy in the executive, it's messy at Parliament, it's messy in the judiciary, actually, though it's given little, light and the media doesn't report so much about it, but there are lots of challenges in there that are talked about recently. And I want to ask, do we need a violent revolution to change things in this country?
You must be careful when you talk about a violent revolution. There are so many other players that have interest when you start shouting a revolution. And for them, they are not looking at you getting a stable state and so on. The likes of Libya and so on wanted change. They had reasons behind. We don't know why. Because for us, what we see was that people are going to school. When you were born, this was given to you, and so on. They had their reasons why someone would come out on the street and burn themselves that caused the revolution. But at the end of the day, when someone in a revolutionary, like he calls himself Ono Pondo, says that in these circumstances, in this situation, There is no solution. The only thing we need is a revolution. I think we have enough mechanisms to start a revolution. A revolution that does not necessarily need to be violent. These people are humans. They understand that they are supposed to be accountable. If we could utilize more of the mechanisms of holding them accountable, they can have some shame. What we have currently is that we have shameless thieves. Someone is told that, how does this come about? How does this all amount of money
You see,
come to be
Aijuka,
spent in one day?
when you do talk about the mechanisms,
Yes.
for example, we've seen various cases of corruption in this country. And we know we have the IGG's office, we
have
have
so
the
many
State House
departments.
Anti-Corruption
There's
Unit,
another new department there.
Investors Protection
Yeah.
Unit, you have the Public Accounts Committees in Parliament, about 4 or 5 of them. You have the Police CID, you have even the CMI at some point is allowed to engage in some of these things. They've done nothing.
You see, when the system starts breaking down from the top, down it is very useless. I can tell you that what we're seeing at Parliament is a true reflection of all the administrative units down. If you just want a stamp at your LC1, you come with the 5,000. The stamp belongs to the government. The chairman, LC1, is paid by the government. They're supposed to resolve your issues free of charge. If you want a police bond, which is free, and they even publicize it, they go to televisions, they go to radios, it is free, you can't get. I was having a conversation with a friend of recent that one of his friends is a lawyer in a law firm, and for them they uphold certain values. They do not take bribes and they do not give bribes. So they were standing in for a client, and this guy was being accused of certain criminal cases or offenses, and he had been in prison for a number of days, and he was worth bail. Was when he also had a particular disease, diabetes, that was challenging him in that prison, and he would die. But when he stood his ground, the magistrate told him that, have you seen my registrar? No. My clerk? No. Okay, bail denied, go back for two weeks. After 2 weeks, the family was ready to pay the 10 million. They went and bribed the guy, and the guy got bail. But this man, after those days, he was almost dying. So the family chased the lawyer and said, we no longer need you. Now, the system down has also learned the art up there. That for someone to agree to what you need from them as a public servant, you are supposed to give them something even after you paying them through your taxes. You must add them more money. So that is how much the system has died. So we do not expect too much. When a fish dies from its head, down it's no longer functional. So why we need an actual revolution that must be very strategic. Funny thing is that the youth, especially the elites, we are turning docile. We fear what will come after the aftermath of the statements I make about the changes that we really need. We really need changes, especially in our accounting mechanisms when it comes to public finances. We need changes, especially on how we hold accountable our public servants. We should no longer just allow people to hold the national cake, have their share, and then start thinking about us. Because at the end of the day, like he said, the class system is apparent. What we have is that a member of parliament in 3 years, he'll be richer than every person in that constituency. You'll never say anything to him. After getting that rich, he will finance all the elections. He will either be the leader. If he fails, he will be appointed a minister. So I can only tell you that the more we expand in matters of extravagancy and leniency and complacency as a country, the more we lose the traction of the kind of future we have been foreseeing as a state. And at the end of the day, if we do not do something, if the very leaders who really try to show to us that we deserve change, we deserve good things, do not come out boldly and speak out with confidence and say, this is wrong, and we cause change, then you're going to have the same situation. Nothing much will change.
Thank you. Muhwezi, all this has come out. The president has seen it, the IGG has seen it, the CMI, and whoever has seen everything, they are aware. And I suspect they even had this information before it came out through the exhibition. But they are not acting. What's the way forward?
I think that, interesting. And when you ask, do we need a violent revolution? I think no. I think that the world, or even Uganda, has since moved away from the need for violence because of what it comes with and the uncertainty. Of course, there are people who can nationalize violent revolutions. You need to read Museveni's paper around violence. It was he was discussing Franz Fanon's paper on violence, and in it he says that violence is like the real organic revolution because it breaks, deconstructs the entire structure and sets anew. Perhaps would say that's what we need. The problem, in my honest opinion, I think that we have since moved away from violence because of how it breaks us. What we need really is a mass conscientization and of the general citizenry, and I think it is possible given the disparity in income inequalities. It's possible to have a rallying message that citizens come together to make it impossible for the state to function.
I think
it's highly possible.
When you talk about that and the rallying and the sharing of information, for example, if we go back to what they called the European Renaissance, you had people that headed this, and these were the elites of that society at the time. You talk about people like, help me out with those names. Yes. Talk about, you can pull out the, I forget, you did talk about him. Karl Marx, and how they came out with the theories. You talk about this economics guy, I forget the name, sorry, but do we have a people in our society whom people are able to believe in and they spearhead this kind of renaissance for Uganda and Africa as a continent?
I think the biggest problem we have, again, is to individualize causes. Because when you make it about an individual, it becomes hard. And also the revolution is at the fate of that individual. Let's give an example. If all of us say, we believe in Bobby Wine as our face of the revolution. If Bobby Wine eats or decides to join government, then we have nowhere to go.
Yes.
But when you look at the people power philosophy itself, its organic foundation, and the belief in Bobby perhaps was that people thought there is need for change, that they have been pushed out of the structure. And I think it's possible for people to start to coalesce around that idea and to realize that the people, whether it's opposition or not, are not the solution, and the entire establishment needs to be drowned. I think it is possible, increasingly. And again, it's the same thing I argued. When you look at the expenses, because honestly, most of the common people know that the system is not working for them. It is the elite who have sort of not been concerned, whose now taxes are biting, and then they are seeing what is happening on the other side. To answer your previous question on IGG and all that, they know. They know they are on these media platforms. Some of them have been written letters to the president, I'm sure, has met the speaker at State House, and all these things. So they know. The problem is that their engagement is on political considerations. How do we manage the politics, not how we solve the problems of accountability.
So politics is over everything else in this country.
Yeah.
Wow, how terrible that can be for a country. Please.
I hope all of you just view that video of when Muhwezi was in Masaka. There was some guy, I think is the chairman, PLU, Western Uganda, who was throwing money at people, and people are fighting for that money. It's just, for me, was a summary of what is happening in the country. People who loot the money just get scrabbles from the pocket, throw it at the people, and then they fight for it. This is what is happening.
Some kind of Robin Hoodism? Well, thank you for that submission. Aijuka, this revolution, because we need it.
Yes.
And the young people. You see, when you look at us today in the country, many of the things that take the attention of a young person are actually not matters of leadership. It is either their favorite football team in England, or a TikTok video, or certainly a movie, Hollywood. And I'm careful with the spaces I talk about. A movie in Hollywood, not Ugawood. A football team in London or in Madrid or Barcelona or wherever. how do we, reshape the concentration, the focus of us as young people to come and look at our country and know that we really have to do something for our country and by extension for the African continent, because the challenges we face in Uganda, you will likely find them in Kenya, in Sudan. Today we have a conflict in Sudan. You have a conflict in Khartoum, Sudan, Southern Sudan, and you have the North Sudan. There's conflict in Chad. There's conflict in Libya. There's conflict in Mali, Niger. Go to Guinea. Conflict everywhere, and it's young people in these conflicts. DRC Congo, it's young people holding guns. How do we, change the mind of these young people to start thinking positive of their country and contributing to growth?
It is very, very unfortunate that we are in a generation where things that we are more personal, individualistic. That's the truth. If you speak to someone, the conclusion of the discussion will turn back to them as individuals. Even when we are running a certain organization, Africa Kwetu Students Organization, it's a Pan-African organization uniting East African states, and we are rallying students to join us. So you call someone that we're having a launch on this day, and you tell them that we have guests that will speak to us, also share ideas and opinions, or we are meeting at Makerere under this tree. We'll talk about Pan-Africanism and these ideas. And then someone will ask, will there be water? Because at the end of the day, what am I benefiting?
Yeah,
it is too individualistic. The other thing is that why it is not easy for us to rally the people is that we are no longer alive to the realities of these circumstances and situations, because we have buried our heads in things that merely excite our minds, and we forget about things that are around us that we see that are negligible, but at the end of the day, they affect everything about us. We are too docile as a generation. We are living a life that is no longer concerned about our future. So you find that all the systems that are being designed, even in universities and institutions of learning, are to clamp down on any political or civic activism that arises. The clearest example is Makerere University. We recently had an election. An election of a guild president. And in that guild president election, we had 16 candidates. To me, that's not political activism. No, you cannot have 16 candidates and you think in a guild election and you think they're all politically active. No, it's just a matter of standing because things are not making sense. Because earlier, why would have few leaders, contestants, was because they would come under umbrellas. They would come under political parties. But when they drafted a new constitution, all the elections are non-partisan. But the people we have at Makerere University are mature. They have freedom of association. If you deny a university student a chance to associate under a political party, will you allow them to associate under a movement, an agenda that is fighting corruption? You can't. Because one, you're already scared that they're under a political party.
Do you think
that is rallying them?
That the banning of political parties at Makerere is something intended to deny people an opportunity to associate through political parties and grow through political parties, given a background that most of the political players we have today, both in government, yes,
I can tell you that whereas I cannot prove how intentional it is, but to the extent of the objective perspective and understanding of any normal thinking Ugandan, it was intentional. You cannot say that mature Ugandans over 18 years studying different courses that are supposed to, to cause their minds to think about their nation, you are denying them a chance to have open-ended association through political parties. I belonged to a certain faction when I was in my first year and second year. I was associating in that faction and we were being groomed. Me, I was not just looking at the whole umbrella. I was trying to, how can I be a good leader for this country? But when they banned the political parties, of course, those things exist undercover, but you cannot fully express yourself. So I can tell you that the clamping down on all those kinds of arrangements in universities, even now when you're trying to set up any association or club, the kind of sieving that they do, you realize that, I don't know how best to fully express it, but it all started from how the government started controlling the education system. That the courses and subjects like political science were merged with other courses and it was no longer an independent course because people were being enlightened about politics. Those who were leaders previously from high school just come to university desiring to continue as leaders and continue their journey until they grow into real leaders. But right now, when you go there, of course, the government is encouraging sciences. I can't say that sciences are bad, but let me tell you, there are certain fields that you will take, and at the end of the day, you find yourself in a way docile. But activism comes when you are alive to the need to associate and alive to the need to participate, not just to associate but to participate. So I can say that what happened at Makerere University is a reflection of how youth in the whole of Uganda are suffering when they desire to join a certain way of associating, especially to cause change politically and in the civic space.
Thank you so much. Muhwezi, briefly as we conclude, there has always been talk about the national dialogue and reconciliation. When you look at all these that are happening, do you think it is time now for this country to have a national dialogue?
Initially, I thought that was the solution because honestly, look at how our nation was formed. We just got few small nation states and were patched up together into this one project. And over time, I think we have wounded ourselves, depending on who is in government and how they get out and how government treats different parts of this project. So there are really questions that need to be settled over dialogue. The problem I have is that with the recent revelations, I don't know if that dialogue would give the results we desire. Because again, I think it's going to be the same group of people sitting together on how to continue to subjugate the rest of the population.
Thank you so much.
What we need is massive conscientization of the masses.
I think we've come to the end of our show. I'll request each of you to give a few final remarks in regards to the topic as we conclude. I'll start with you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. I have enjoyed the discussion, and it has triggered me in a way to think more about, especially starting from the top at Parliament. And my last comment is that what happens at the top most of the times comes down. If you pour water when it rains on the mountain, where it floods, it's in the valleys. It's not on the mountain on top, no. The mountain will still stand high, dry, but down in the valley, there will be a flood. So whatever you see up there, don't complain when you see people are not eating. Down there, the government has provided money, but they are not eating, they're not getting anything. So I can only tell you that what happens at the top of the mountain is later reflected at the valley. My prayer is that our politicians become human again. They breathe the air, that they breathe oxygen again rather than breathing money. They breathe oxygen again rather than breathing personal sentiments and what they desire to achieve, and the ego that they have reflected in whatever they desire to achieve, and all the bossy character that they have immersed in a way of, I want to get this what I'm feared, and when I stand again, one will think about this. My prayer is that Parliament will now look at Ugandans as fellow Ugandans and people they represent that deserve to see, accountability for the little that they contribute to the national cake. So not just 3 people who sit up there and dictate what they're supposed to eat. So my prayer is that Parliament in general will realize that this awakening means something. Where there is smoke, there is fire. The truth of the matter is that something is wrong. So they must rectify it and come out and give public accountability to what is happening in Parliament, and they should stop being dismissive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allan, Aijuka. Yes, Muhwezi Lawel.
Yeah, conclusively, I think to our viewers, especially those who are Ugandans, the truth is that there's no value for the taxes that you pay, for the money they cut off from your salary. That money goes to be eaten by largely the people at the helm of Parliament and government. So if you deserve to indeed be angry. That's the truth. There's no covering it. Please be as angry as possible. Otherwise, I just think that there's hope for this country to be better, and that the youth still have time to shape this country in the ways they deserve. I want to thank the team here for always giving us the opportunity to share these ideas. Some of these may just be ideals, but who knows what the conversations can turn out to be. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. How saddening that can be, that unfortunately the taxes a Ugandan pays are not utilized. But to you, our viewers out there, thank you so much. Muhwezi Lawel, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for the amazing views you give us. Aijuka, Allan, thank you so much for making time with us today, and thank you so much for the amazing ideas you put out. We hope one day this land of Uganda and Africa will be a better place to be in. Special thanks to the people behind the machines. Yes, you could see gentlemen alone here, but we have a couple of ladies behind the machines, so gender equality and balance, Civic Space TV is so sensitive to that. Special thanks also to Center for Constitutional Governance for making this possible, and we want to say good evening and may you have freedom always.